360 requires clergy to report suspected child abuse or neglect, even if they acquire the knowledge or suspicion during a penitential communication. Clergy are already mandated child abuse and neglect reporters in California. This bill would level the playing field by holding them to the same standard as the other 45 mandated reporters listed in statute.
My name's Cameron Torres. I'm an abuse survivor. I was born and raised in a small town with nothing but Jehovah's Witnesses. And, naturally, I was raised in a God-fearing family, so I loved her and I wanted to do what was right in God's eyes. At a really early age, at around 6, I was taken advantage of by a man in the congregation. He was really, really close to the family, so they trusted him. But my mother suspected something was up, something was wrong, so she asked me and then went to the elders. When I confirmed that, they told her, it's in God's hands now. Don't speak about it. We'll look into it and we'll do something about it. And they didn't want us to talk about it for fear of, again, Satan, the devil, trying to attack the one true religion. So nothing happened. And a few years later, it happened again with a different man. And they said the same thing. Don't speak about it. It's in God's hands, and they'll take care of it. So these two men I had to grow up with, staring at as abusers. And they're still loose in the congregations to this day with higher positions, and they're surrounded by children all the time. So it was up until about 2 years ago that I realized that I had been lied to my entire life. I found out that I grew up in a cult and that they were hiding thousands of sex abuse cases. This is a public safety issue for all religions, governments, businesses. Clergy-penitent privilege has been around for the last 100+ years. This will cost the state less money for having to rehabilitate people who turn to drugs and alcohol and other uses when they don't have an outlet. SB 360 aims to end this clergy privilege and have mandatory reporting. I think it's time that the universe is telling us to protect our children.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
Maddie Hyatt from California Civil Liberties Advocacy. Just wanted to quickly state that we follow the no harm principle. We don't feel the state has any right to regulate thought or belief, but when people act on those beliefs and their conduct oversteps other people's rights, we feel that the First Amendment rights of one cease where another neighbor's 14th Amendment rights begin. That's the no harm principle, and that's why we support this bill as a civil liberties issue.
Marissa Gonzalez with the National Association of Social Workers, and we are in strong support of this. Thank you.
Zeb Leatherman, on behalf of my aunts, Linda and Dorlin, I strongly support this bill.
Thank you.
My name is Candace Conti. I'm an abuse survivor, and I strongly support SB 360.
I'm Kathleen Conti. I'm an abuse survivor, and I strongly endorse SB 360.
My name is Stephanie Carson. I am an abuse survivor within a religious organization. I am in strong support of SB 360.
My name is Alexandra Topol. I'm the daughter of my mother, Stephanie, my stepdad, Brian, both abused in the religious. I'm in support of SB 360.
My name is Star Paul. I'm an abuse survivor inside the Jehovah's Witnesses. I strongly support this bill.
My name is Jolene Rivera. I'm a child sex abuse survivor. And I'm in strong support of SB 360.
My name is Sister Sophia. I'm in strong support of SB 360.
My name is Tara James. My mother was raised in the Jehovah's Witness Church, and I'm in strong support of 360. The world needs to change, guys, and it changes with this.
Edward James, stand in strong support.
Allison Hopkins, Mother Abbess of Sister of the Valley, Sacramento, in strong support.
Brother David, Sisters of the Valley, in strong support of this bill.
I'm Sister Kate, Mother Abbess of the Merced Sisters of the Valley Convent, and I have a number of sisters with us who have suffered this, and we're so glad you're taking it on, and we're in support of SB 360.
My name is Lena Samuelsson. I'm with the Sisters of the Valley, and I'm in strong support.
My name is Megan Griffin. I am a sexual abuse survivor, and I am in strong support of this bill.
Good morning, Madam. My name is David Alvarez. I'm a representative of First Nations, California Yaqui Association, and I support this bill, SB 360, because I think it's a long time coming. We know as First Nation people what it is to be abused and how children have been abused from the very beginning. We all are not strangers to what happened to the American Indian people, and I see it continuously happening. I'm honored that I was asked to come down here, and I was invited to speak in behalf of this. It's been far too long this abuse has been going on, these laws that protect these abusers. I hope all my relations, thank you.
My name is James Sanchez, and I'm in strong support.
My name is Karen Bentley. I was raised in a religious institution. I've seen many people who have not had their abuse reported to lawmakers. It's kept inside the congregation. I've seen it in many different religions. I've been part of the Antioch School District. I've worked with children who have been abused by teachers. I've seen the effects that it's had on children for years. I have friends outside of the organization who were abused as children that have turned to prostitution, drugs. I've seen the damage it's done to children, how hard it is for them to survive, the cost it has made to society. I've seen the statistics where only 30%, 20% is reported. There are many more that are not reported. It's affected society for a long time. I am currently the Secretary-Treasurer of SCARS. We started an organization to stop child abuse, advocates for reform and safety. We thought the only way to change society and help society would be to change laws and change culture, the way people think about it. We want children to be happy and free to go report it and to be congratulated and honored in reporting it so they will have pride and not have to hide. We want them to feel good about themselves. We want them to move on with their life. I'm in strong support of this bill. Thank you.
I'm Roger Bentley, Vice President of SCARS. And we've chosen to be the voice of those that don't have a voice, the 2-year-olds, the 3-year-olds, 12 years olds. They're the most vulnerable and the most innocent. And I think you can see from this group that that voice is being heard. So SCARS is in strong support of SB 360.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Hyatt. I was sexually harassed by an elder. This is my first time speaking in public, and it's scary. And I support 360 bill. Thank you.
Before I ask for the witnesses in opposition, I want to thank the survivors very, very much for speaking. And I want to just applaud your courage. It is very difficult. And I think we all know that abuse of children happens because either the child is in a setting where they feel they cannot tell, or they do tell, and it's never revealed. It allows the abuse to go on. So we applaud your courage. And I am an abuse survivor, years of abuse. I was not able to speak about it publicly until about 6 years ago. So it is very, very difficult, and I really applaud you. And now we will take the witnesses in opposition.
My name is Kevin Snyder with Pacific Justice Institute, a Center for Public Policy, where I serve as Chief Counsel. Confession is a millennia-old religious practice. It is common knowledge that the practice is a sacrament of the Catholic Church, of the Eastern Orthodox Church. In the Protestant Reformed tradition, it is found in the Lutheran, Episcopal, and Presbyterian churches, the American Baptist, Methodist, Latter-day Saints, and Church of Scientology. I would estimate that half of evangelical, fundamentalist, and Pentecostal churches maintain strict confidences such that they will not report confession of crimes, nor will they testify in court if subpoenaed. Passage of the bill before you would break the first clause of the first commandment, if you will. The religion clause provides that no law can be passed that prohibits the free exercise of religion. Placing clergy in a position such that they will be gored by one or the other of two horns of a dilemma is precisely what the First Amendment forbids. Just as Congress rightly exempted clergy from the military draft, so too this body should have the prudence to not conscript ministers into the ranks of law enforcement. There are well over 40 categories of individuals that have been placed at the service of the state in relation to reporting suspicions of child abuse and neglect. The church should not be used as a tool of the state. Madam Chairman, thank you for your deliberation on this matter and for your service to the community, and I urge the members to vote nay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Andrew Rivas, and I'm the Executive Director of the California Catholic Conference, and I am here to express the Bishop's opposition to the bill and offer myself as a person to talk to as to why we would be opposed to the bill. And let me first start by saying that it is a self-defeating bill, and that's one of the reasons why we oppose it.
All right. Questions or comments from, yes, Senator Jackson.
Yes, to the attorney who's here, as I had mentioned earlier with respect to the Second Amendment, we have no amendments that are unrestricted and unqualified. And certainly the First Amendment, in terms of freedom of religion, we do have laws prohibiting bigamy. And those are contrary to certain religious groups. So there is no amendment that is without some restriction. And I'm sure you are aware of that. The fact of the matter is that we have had a plague, an epidemic of excuses and claims of religion, which have allowed pedophiles and abusers to exist in this country and this world unfettered for far too long. And the notion that talking about at the service of the state, I would submit that it is immoral and against God's will for people to abuse children. And I think it is the responsibility of the state to do everything it can to make sure that does not continue. I think we would be remiss in our responsibilities to accept any claim that religion and man-made religion supersedes the protections that we owe children in particular in our society. So I would suggest that your First Amendment argument is outdated. As was mentioned, there are many other states where this has taken place without repercussion. That the state, the people, do have the right to limit certain practices that are believed to be inappropriate, immoral, and certainly to give a pass because someone goes in and confesses behavior that is offensive to mankind and probably to God, but I'll let God make that decision. I don't pretend to know whether this is something that would be acceptable, but I suspect, given the notion of good and evil, and God being good and the devil being evil, that if we were going to have that religious discussion, that's where I think we would land on God's side and the side of good. But we are a society. We are governed by laws. We are governed by what we believe to be what is morally correct and what is in the best interests of our communities and society. And I would submit accepting and condoning allowing this kind of behavior to continue on a claim of religious freedom, I think is anathema to everything we hold dear. And I hope it is anathema to everything that we hold dear. So First Amendment, not unlimited. Second Amendment, not unlimited. We are a society of human beings, and we try to protect ourselves and each other as best we can. So I want to thank you for bringing this bill, and I want to thank the witnesses for coming forward. I'm sure this was not an easy thing to do, but this has got to stop. And with that, I would move the bill.
The penitent clergy privilege is very narrow. It's when someone goes to a minister in private for penitential purposes and communicates and confesses that. It is not dealing with most circumstances are covered by this. And so so I don't believe broadening that into areas that are a sacrament of the church. I think that is anathema. That is a deep problem in the notion that the First Amendment is outdated is a troubling statement coming from this body.
Well, excuse me if I may. Nobody said the First Amendment is outdated. We said it is not unlimited, and you as an attorney, I am sure, know that very well. So please do not misconstrue my statements.
State that I know of that doesn't have the protection is Texas. It never has. But it's my understanding, at least the time that I lived in Texas, that the penitential communications were honored and respected. The intent is to have a better relationship with God. Even if this bill were to pass, priests would not be able to come forward and reveal what was stated in the penitential communication under the rules of canon law, which would excommunicate the priest automatically.
Referenced that this silence is what has allowed children to continue to be abused, but I really should not have used children alone. It has allowed anyone, adults, children, any age, to continue to be abused. And we see that in powerful institutions that unfortunately, not all, but many are, I don't want to say necessarily designed such, but within those powerful institutions, if there are abusers, that the entities protect themselves. So we see it again and again and again, whether it was in the entertainment industry or different faith-based groups or scouts organizations or so many things, employers, workplaces, where until we have had laws to make it safe for people affected to report without retaliation and without consequence, minimal consequence to themselves, that the silence continues the abuse. And we see it again and again and again in any number of institutions, and we've taken many, many actions, whether it's changing workplace rules or a whole host of other laws in order to protect abusers and to make it as safe as possible for them to come forward. What this bill does is put the religious folks on the level playing field with all other mandatory reporters, which I think is absolutely appropriate at this time, given what we know about the prevalence of abuse within these religious settings. And that for us not to would be putting our head in the sand. So I support the bill and appreciate, Senator Hill, that you brought it back. And unless there's any other comments or questions, and the last thing I would say to those of you who have spoken maybe for the first time, it does get easier to speak about it.
Thank you for yours. And I want to thank the witnesses who are here under a great, I'm sure, pain today. It did not go unnoticed, nor is it or unvalued by your comments. You interestingly made the comment about head in the sand, Madam Chair, and I think, as one of the witnesses in opposition stated, that a person going to the church or going into a confessional or having that communication now won't be able to do that. But I think where the head in the sand is this also would apply to clergy, and clergy communication or knowledge of. So when a member of the clergy knows that another clergy or hears of or sees or hears something, they will have to report that in the future. And I think that's where one of the problems is. And related to Texas, actually on the Catholic Diocese website, it clearly states that Texas law does not respect the confidentiality of the penitential communications. So it's very clear there, and it seems to be working. And as Senator Jackson so ably commented, no freedoms are absolute. We have freedom of speech, but as we know, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. We have freedom of religion and the ability to exercise and practice that religion, but as we know, polygamy from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is not legal. And just a couple of years ago in this building, we passed a mandatory vaccination law that eliminated exemptions, religious exemptions from your religion, because the greater harm caused by the exercise and practice of a religion should be considered. And that's exactly what we're doing today. I respectfully ask for your aye vote, members, and thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hill. And before the roll call, apologies for indulging me, committee members, but the other comment I was going to make is that
happy to present this bill, SB 45, to the committee. This bill prohibits the suspension of a driver's license for non-vehicle related crimes. Suspending a driver's license became a popular method of punishment in the 80s or 90s, whether or not a crime had anything to do with operating a vehicle. In researching this, I found that vehicle code statutes were rather haphazard. You know, some crimes were included, some crimes were not. Now, a driver's license is essential for people everyday's lives. Suspending a license for crimes unrelated to driving does not increase the public safety. It only deters the person's ability to care for their children, go to work, maintain employment, and pay restitution. People's livelihoods depend on having a valid license. 78% of Californians drive to work, and over 5 million jobs in California require a valid driver's license. In 2018, the Chicago Jobs Council released a report highlighting the
Maddie Hyatt from the California Civil Liberties Advocacy in strong support.
Danica Rodarmel from Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights of San Francisco.
Thank you, Chair Skinner, and members of your committee for being here for this important bill. As many of you are aware, this bill would allow all defendants convicted of serious and violent crimes and sentenced to 15 years or more to make a motion for discovery. Innocent people are currently serving time for crimes that they did not commit. Horace Roberts from Riverside County, who is now 60, was exonerated after spending 19 years in prison for a murder he did not commit. Horace was released this past October after forensic evidence cleared him of the crime and led law enforcement to the actual killer. This bill recognizes people like Horace who are serving time for crimes they never committed. Justice doesn't always work the first time, and the legislature recognizes that. That's why we passed.
Nicholas Gonzalez with the California Civil Liberties Advocacy and Support.
Leslie Caldwell for the California Public Defenders Association.
Today I'm presenting SB 555, which will do three things in short. The goal is to reduce the cost of communication services and commissary items sold in county jails. Secondly, we hope to promote fiscal responsibility in jail contracts with service providers. And third, to ensure that the legislative intent of the Inmate Welfare Fund is protected. With this bill, our goal is to have an opportunity to enable stronger family connections through communications, which creates a higher probability of improving recidivism rates for those incarcerated. A little bit of background. California allows every individual county sheriff to negotiate his or her own contract independently with private companies that provide communication services to county jails. The contracts and services are largely unregulated, which has resulted in private companies gaining significant profits off the backs of the incarcerated and their loved ones. The inmate welfare funds have been, in some instances, misused for purposes that do not benefit the rehabilitation of inmates and have been instead used for services that probation departments and the counties should already be providing. For example, there are cases in which inmate welfare funds were used to purchase security cameras and transport vans. To this end, SB 555 will do the following. It will limit the cost of phone and electronic communications and the cost of items sold in the commissaries. It will prohibit contracts from including commissions or other incentives for the procurement of contracts. It will tighten the permissible expenditures of county inmate welfare funds, and it will rename the county inmate welfare fund to Incarcerated People's Welfare Funds. At the state level, the commissions from the private companies that provide telephone services to CDCR have been reduced. The purpose of this bill is to similarly reduce the cost of phone calls at the county level and to expand these cost reductions to other forms of communications as well as to commissary items sold in jail.
Proud co-sponsor with
some of you
thanks
may
to the
recall
author and the committee. Urgent aye vote.
Nicholas Gonzalez, with the California Civil Liberties Advocacy and Support.
File item number 9, SB 310. You have the floor.
Thanks so much. So, members, our Constitution, both the state and the federal, guarantees that we have the right to a jury of our peers, technically to a trial by our peers. But we now have some laws on our state books that, in practice, shrink the jury pool and stop juries from being representative. For example, people with a felony conviction, a prior felony conviction, cannot serve on juries. You can get a felony from graffiti or from a drug offense, for example, from a past addiction. There are many cases where there are felony convictions, and yet you can have a person who has been crime-free, living within their community successfully for decades, and yet still they cannot serve on a jury. This, of course, disproportionately excludes people of color from juries. And just to give you a statistic, in 2016, within California's state prison populations, while African Americans in the population of California as a whole are only 6% of the population, 30% of the men in state prison were black. So what SB 310 does is correct that. It widens the pool of eligible jurors by allowing people with past felony convictions to serve on a jury. It also expands the list that can be used to select juries to include utility ratepayers and state tax filers, because we hear from many courts that they have difficulty getting enough people to show up for jury duty, and part of it is because we have a very restricted set of lists that we use to pull for jurors, so this is to expand that. And it also removes presumption that the list used for jury selection is a fair cross-section of the population. Now, just for folks that may be thinking, all right, why should California move in this direction of allowing a former felon to serve on a jury without restrictions? There are many states that do so: Colorado, Illinois, Maine, Oregon, just for example.
Jim Lindbergh,
I would like
on behalf of the Friends Committee
witness-
on Legislation of California, in strong support.
Patty Hyatt, California Civil Liberties Advocacy, in strong support.